I sit in silence, wrapped in the cloak of night, not just around my body but deep within my being. The world outside has long gone quiet, and even the wind, once so lively with its whispers through the trees, has settled into stillness. It is the kind of darkness that presses inward, not merely the absence of light but a presence in itself, thick, sentient, and complete. It rests not just in the world but in the folds of my own heart. I feel it settle over my shoulders like an ancient robe woven from centuries of sorrow and solitude, and I let it drape around me without resistance. There is no use in struggling against it, for I have come to learn that the night does not yield to force. It must be welcomed, honored, and sat with as one sits with a guest carrying news too profound for hurried speech. Above me, the stars have vanished behind an iron veil of clouds, their gentle fire extinguished by the heaviness of sky. The moon, which I have so often turned to for guidance, the pearl of the heavens, the silver mirror of longing, has hidden its face. The air is thick, unmoving, suspended in a hush that swallows even the most stubborn of thoughts. I am alone, but the aloneness is not unfamiliar. It is the same aloneness that once met me when shams disappeared from my world, that same suffocating stillness that descends when the one you love vanishes, taking the light with them. I lower myself to the ground of the courtyard, the ancient stones beneath me still holding the cool breath of night. Their coldness meets the warmth of my hands like a dialogue between what is fleeting and what endures. My legs fold beneath me in the posture of prayer, though no words escape my lips. What would I say to God tonight, in this ink-drenched hour when even the olive trees sleep and the flowers draw inward? I no longer speak for the sake of hearing myself speak. I have come to learn that words must wait until silence has had its turn. Around me, the world lies cloaked in an invisible mist. Even the familiar shapes of the garden, the well, the cypress, the broken bench I used to sit on with my son, all have vanished into shadow. And yet, curiously, in this blindness, something within me begins to see. My eyes may be open, but it is not with them that I look. I gaze instead from the inner chamber of my chest, from the soul's dark window. There, within that obscurity, I begin to sense stirrings, like whispers in the water, ripples on a still pond caused by some invisible presence just beneath the surface. This is the place of not knowing. The threshold where one cannot go forward because there is no path and cannot go back because the bridge has collapsed. This is the space in which patience is not merely a virtue but a lifeline. I have spoken often of patience to others, told seekers to wait for the beloved, to trust the unfolding of divine will, to remain rooted during the dry seasons of the soul. But now, sitting here in the presence of this vast night, I taste the truth of those words in my own marrow. They are no longer teachings but experiences etched into my bones. The darkness presses in, but strangely it no longer feels like an enemy. It is not here to defeat me. It is here to unmake me. To dissolve all the false shapes I have clung to, the scholar, the teacher, the poet, the seeker, and to return me to my essence. And that essence, I now feel, is not a role I play or a mask I wear. It is a silence deeper than thought, a stillness older than time. In this stillness, I sense God not as a distant force but as a breath within my breath, a warmth in the center of my chest, a gentle flame that neither flares nor fades. I close my eyes, not from weariness, but to withdraw even further from the world of forms and open the gate to the world within. In that inner garden, I wait, not idly, but reverently. I wait with the devotion of one who knows that dawn does not rush. The night has its own purpose, and it must be fulfilled before the horizon can bleed light. I wait not because I have no choice, but because I have chosen to trust. And trust, I am learning, is the most radical form of love. Time becomes irrelevant in this darkness. Minutes no longer tick like a clock's insistence, but flow like water from one breath to the next. I do not know how long I have been here. I do not care. I feel my heartbeat, slow and steady, as though echoing the rhythm of the earth itself. I imagine the seed beneath the soil, wrapped in blackness, unable to see the sun, yet full of a secret knowledge that light will return. I too am such a seed. And this darkness is not death. It is germination. My faith, once a flame that danced for others, now burns in silence, steady and unseen. And in that unseen fire, I begin to sense the shape of what is to come. Not in detail, no, the future is never clear in the dark. But in promise. A quiet promise that all this waiting is not in vain. That something is being formed in the hidden places of my soul. That dawn is not an illusion, but a certainty hidden just beyond the curve of night. So I remain seated, cross-legged on the stone, wrapped in silence, encased in shadow. I make no plea, no cry, no gesture to hasten the morning. I let the darkness have me. I give myself to it not as a prisoner, but as a disciple. And in that surrender, I discover the beginning of peace. Not the peace of resolution, but the peace of patience. The peace that blooms not when light returns, but when one stops resisting the night. And in the deepest chamber of my being, I hear the faintest murmur, not from the world, not from the wind, but from within myself. Be patient where you sit in the dark. The dawn is coming. And for the first time in a long time, I believe it. Memories begin to stir in the darkness like ripples across a still pond, unbidden but familiar, rising from the depths of my silence with the grace of forgotten birds returning to a wintered nest. The courtyard, though cloaked in shadow, becomes vivid in my mind. It is no longer simply the empty space before me. It transforms into a vessel of remembrance, filled with the luminous echoes of those who once gathered here. I see the students who came to me with their burning questions, their eyes wide with wonder, their hearts so open, so raw with longing. I remember their voices, the tremble of one asking about the nature of love, the boldness of another demanding to know the path to God, the hushed awe of those simply listening. It was here, in this very place, that verses first rose to my lips like birds from trees at dawn. The stones beneath me had once reflected with laughter, conversation, learning. But tonight, they lie silent. And so do I. What a strange turn life takes. There was a time when I believed my words could shape the world, that knowledge was a flame I could pass to every outstretched hand. I stood like a minaret, reaching toward the divine, and others looked to me as if I were a lighthouse. I did not resist that image, I too believed in it. I believed that the clarity I spoke of was something I possessed permanently, that the insight I offered others would somehow shield me from ever losing my own way. How gently, how mercifully, life dismantles our illusions, not with violence, but with silence. Now, here I sit in a night so deep that even the stars do not dare to shine. And I realize that I am no longer a teacher. Not in this moment. Here, in this velvet blackness, I am the student. The one who listens. The one who waits. The one who knows that the real teachings come not from the tongue but from the abyss, from the sacred not knowing that cracks open the soul. Everything I thought I was is slowly dissolving, and in that dissolution, I catch the scent of something eternal. I press my palm to the stones once more and close my eyes. And in the hush, I feel the flicker of my own breath moving in and out, a quiet wind within a hollow chamber. I think of those who came to me seeking truth, how they waited on my every word as if I were the door to something higher. Did I truly open that door for them? Or was I simply pointing to something they already carried inside? In the past, I might have answered quickly, confidently. Now I only wonder, and in that wondering, I feel more honest. There is a humility in the dark that daylight cannot offer. In the light, we are seen, and often we perform. We uphold the images others have of us, we speak because we are expected to, we walk paths we have long outgrown simply because others still believe in them. But in the dark, when no one watches, we meet ourselves unadorned. Without titles, without reputation, without applause. We meet the one who lies beneath the poet, beneath the mystic, beneath the sage. We meet the raw, soft core of our own soul, the part that aches and breaks, that doubts and hungers, that kneels when no one is watching. I am with that part of myself now, and I do not turn away. I begin to hear other voices, not with my ears, but within. The voices of teachers long gone, those whose words once lit my path. Rabia, whose love for God burned like desert fire. Adder, whose stories cracked open my spirit like a seed under sun. Shams, the whirlwind who turned my world inside out and disappeared without warning. Their voices do not speak in sentences. They speak in presence, in knowing, in the weight of silence that presses gently against my skin. I do not need their answers tonight. I only need to feel them near. The courtyard stretches beyond time. It is no longer bound to this night or this body. I feel as though I am sitting at the crossroads of many lives, many lifetimes, all waiting. And there is no shame in the waiting. There is a strange dignity in admitting that I do not know, that I cannot see, that I must surrender to the slow rhythm of becoming. I once thought I was here to illuminate others, to guide them across the river. But perhaps I was here to learn how to cross it myself, again and again, with grace, with patience, with trust. And so I return to the breath, to the rhythm that anchors me. It moves in and out, quiet, steady, eternal. It asks nothing. It does not rush. It simply flows. And I begin to understand that patience is not passive. It is not resignation. It is not sitting idly by hoping something will save you. Patience is the deep work of the soul. It is choosing, moment by moment, not to abandon yourself. It is holding vigil in the night even when the candle goes out. It is trusting the unseen. It is believing in the rhythm of life even when you cannot hear its song. Somewhere within me, beyond words and thoughts, I feel the faintest warmth begin to stir. Not a flame, not yet. But the idea of a flame. The hint of its return. It is enough. Enough to remain seated here. Enough to resist the urge to flee into distraction, into old narratives, into false light. I do not need answers tonight. I only need to remember that this darkness is part of the story. That it is shaping me, stripping me, softening me. That it is making space for something new. The dawn will come. I do not know when or how. But I know it with the same certainty that I know I am breathing. And when it comes, it will not be because I demanded it. It will come because I was willing to wait. Because I did not turn away from the dark. Because I stayed. Because I listened. And because I believed, not in the light I could see, but in the light that had not yet arrived. And so I remain in the center of this silence, not as a man forgotten, but as one remembered by the stars, even when they do not shine. I sit not as a soul lost, but as one returning. And in the sacred waiting, I begin to remember who I truly am. The breeze returns, tender, tentative, as if testing whether it is welcome in this deep, motionless night. I welcome it not with words, but with the stillness of my body, the openness of my heart. It weaves through the silence like a sacred thread, and in its wake it leaves the faint perfume of jasmine, more poignant now, as though the petals themselves were breathing out memories. That scent, sweet, sorrowful, soft, pulls something ancient from within me. Not a single memory, but the very essence of memory itself. I do not see faces clearly, but I feel presences, companions who once sat beside me beneath this very sky, their laughter mingling with the leaves, their questions rising like birds startled into flight. They are gone now, those moments dissolved into the great river of time, yet tonight they return, not to haunt me, but to remind me of the sacredness of all things fleeting. The jasmine blooms whether I notice or not. In the darkness, unseen, unwitnessed, it opens itself to the world. What faith must it have, to unfold in silence, without applause, without promise of sunlight? I press my palm against the ground again, feeling the cool, ancient stone beneath me. I imagine roots curling beneath the soil, unseen tendrils twisting deeper, growing in silence. It occurs to me that this is what patience truly means. Not idle waiting, not passive endurance, but the brave, quiet act of growth in hidden places. In this darkness, I too am growing. Slowly. Invisibly. profoundly. A small insect hums nearby, a tiny vibration in the vast silence. Its wings flicker like threads of sound, brushing against the skin of the night. Even this creature, unnoticed by the world, continues its simple life undeterred by darkness. Its song is not grand, yet it fills the space between my thoughts. Everything in this courtyard lives. Everything, even now, continues in its rhythm. I realize that it is not the world that has stilled, it is I who have slowed enough to perceive it. And this slowing feels like a kind of awakening. I once believed awakening meant sudden light, divine fire, the opening of heaven. But now I know it is much gentler, like a tide that returns unnoticed, like breath you forgot you were breathing. This, too, is revelation. Not in thunder, but in the softness of air moving through leaves. Not in vision, but in the fragrance of unseen blossoms. The divine does not need to shout. It speaks in whispers, in pauses, in the quiet places we usually flee from. I begin to recite inwardly, not poems or prayers I've memorized, but the simplest words that rise up from within like water from a hidden spring. Be still. Be patient. They form no verse, no structure, yet in their repetition, they become a sacred rhythm. Each syllable a footstep, each pause a breath. I do not speak them aloud. I let them pulse inside me, like a mantra carved into the fabric of my being. With each repetition, the words do not grow louder, they grow deeper. They dig into the soil of my soul, planting something I cannot name. I think of all the times I have spoken to others about surrender, about trusting the unseen, about walking in darkness with faith as their lantern. I wonder now whether I truly knew the weight of those words. It is one thing to speak of trust while bathed in light. It is another to live trust when you cannot see your own hands before you. And yet, here I am, sightless and still, choosing to believe in something more than what my senses offer. Choosing to trust not what is proven, but what is promised. The promise is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not guarantee ease or speed. It only whispers, this is not the end. Keep breathing. The light is coming. And so I breathe. I breathe as if my breath itself is an act of worship, an offering to the night. I breathe as if each inhale draws in the strength of the mountains, and each exhale releases all the fears I no longer wish to carry. I breathe until I am no longer merely breathing, I am being breathed by something larger than myself. There is no rush here. Time loosens its grip. I no longer count moments. I no longer measure the distance between now and the dawn. What matters is this moment, this heartbeat, this breath, this stillness. I begin to understand that waiting is not a pause before life resumes. Waiting is life. This quiet, this depth, this hidden unfolding, this is life in its most essential form. In the dark, I am learning not to reach, but to receive. Not to chase, but to open. The jasmine scent deepens, or perhaps I have only become more sensitive to it. I feel it curling around me like a gentle shawl, draping over my shoulders, wrapping my ribs. I imagine the tiny blossoms, delicate and pale, blooming without witness. And it brings me to a quiet revelation, everything sacred blooms in silence. Love, too, blooms in silence, not the noisy love of possession and praise, but the quiet love that endures, that waits, that watches in the dark and believes in the unseen light. The silence around me grows luminous, not with light, but with presence. I feel held by something invisible, cradled by the night. The courtyard is no longer empty, it is full of stillness, and stillness is not absence, it is a presence so complete, so whole, it needs no name. In that fullness, I begin to feel the shape of something emerging, not from outside, but from within. A glow not yet visible, but felt. A warmth not yet seen, but trusted. And I realize, suddenly, with tears gathering like dew in my eyes, I am not waiting for the light. I am the light, buried now, perhaps, beneath sorrow, beneath doubt, beneath years of roles and expectations. But it is there, I carry dawn in my chest like an unopened letter from the beloved. And every breath I take in this darkness is a step closer to opening it. Every moment of patience, every whispered "be still," brings me nearer to the unfolding. So I remain seated in the center of this quiet night, not as one abandoned, but as one invited. The darkness does not demand answers. It asks only that I stay, that I breathe, that I believe. And I do. Not with certainty, but with something far more powerful, with faith born from surrender. And with every breath, the seed of dawn within me swells, preparing to bloom. The night was a sea, vast and endless, with no shore in sight, and I was a lone boat drifting without oars. But unlike before, I no longer feared the drift. I had stopped looking to the horizon for rescue and had begun, instead, to listen to the water itself, the lapping of its waves, the whisper of its currents, the strange, sacred hush that only the dark knows how to hold. There was something ancient in this stillness, something older than words or thought. It felt as though I had finally come to the true temple, and that the prayer here was silence. I remembered how all my life I had been trained to speak, to explain, to fill silence with meaning. As a scholar, I was celebrated for interpretation. As a poet, I was praised for how I wrapped spirit in language. But here, now, I saw that no word I had ever spoken could match the power of what I was learning in this wordless dark. Truth was not something I could hold up like a lantern. It was something I had to let dissolve into me. And the moment I stopped trying to grasp it, it began to become me. There was a kind of baptism taking place, though there was no water, no ritual, no hands laid upon me. The darkness itself was the baptism. It washed me not with clarity, but with surrender. It did not give me new beliefs, it took all beliefs from me until I stood stripped, vulnerable, with nothing left but breath and being. And in that bareness, I found no lack. I found something deeper than knowledge, something softer than faith. I found the patience of the earth. I sat with my legs folded beneath me, and my hands resting lightly in my lap, and I realized how much of my life had been lived leaning forward. Reaching, stretching, grasping. Even my love had been a reaching, a hunger to merge with what lay beyond the veil. But now I leaned back, into the arms of this unseen stillness, and for the first time, I understood what it meant to be held. Not by a person. Not even by God as I had imagined him, but by existence itself. By this moment, vast and unknowable, and yet utterly intimate. The cool breeze that passed through the courtyard was not just wind, it was a caress. The hush of the trees became a lullaby. Even the distant barking of a dog became part of some strange, nocturnal orchestra that played not for the ears, but for the soul. Every sound, every movement, every breath of night was an invitation. Be here. Just here. That is enough. And so I was. For once, I was not preparing to be somewhere else, not preparing to teach or speak or be seen. I was just a man in the dark, breathing. The sky above had no stars. A heavy cloud cover had blanketed the heavens. And yet, strangely, I felt closer to the stars than I ever had on a clear night. I knew they were there, hidden behind the veil. Just as so many truths are. Just as the beloved is, often not absent, but hidden, waiting for the eye that looks not outward, but inward. We are so often tricked by appearances. We believe light is what we see, but sometimes it is what we cannot see that illumines us most. It is in blindness that we learn to listen. In stillness that we learn to see. A thought rose up gently from my chest, not in the language of the mind, but in the slow blooming of inner knowing. You are being undone so you can become. And I knew it was true. My grief, my confusion, the aching silence, all of it was the gentle dismantling of the fortress I had built around my soul. And now, in the absence of structure, something softer was beginning to take shape. Not a wall, but a garden. Not a defense, but a sanctuary. I remembered the caterpillar story we so often tell children, never realizing how true it is. how the caterpillar must dissolve entirely before it can grow wings. Not just change shape, not simply add parts, but dissolve. Become formless. A soup of what it once was. And in that formlessness, new instructions rise. I, too, was in that chrysalis. Not dying. Becoming. My back ached slightly, and my knees had begun to complain, but I did not move. Even the discomfort was sacred now. It reminded me I had a body, this temporary temple in which the soul walks. I placed my hand gently on my heart and felt its beat. That quiet, faithful thumping. It had never stopped, through joy or sorrow. Through noise or silence. Even when I had forgotten it, it had remembered me. The heart is like the beloved in that way, ever present, patient, never forcing its presence, yet always waiting to be known. A memory came to me, uninvited but welcome. It was of Shams. The fire in his eyes. The laughter that sliced through pretension like a blade through silk. How he used to stare at me in silence until I could no longer bear my own masks. How he saw not just who I was, but who I could be. The ache in my chest deepened. I missed him. Not just the man, but the mirror he had been for my soul. And yet, even this longing, too, became a prayer. I did not push it away. I let it burn, slow and sacred, like incense in the heart. Perhaps this is what the night teaches, how to hold everything. The beauty and the ache. The memory and the absence. The yearning and the surrender. There was no division here, no border between pain and grace. The longer I sat, the more they became one thing. The ache was the grace. The darkness was the light. The silence was the answer. And slowly, like a slow dawn behind a thick horizon, I began to sense that something was rising, not outside, but within. Not yet light. Not yet clarity. But a deep, living warmth. A sense that even though I could not see the sun, it had already begun its journey toward me. That was enough. I did not need to know when it would rise. I only needed to know that it would. And so I stayed. Breathing. Listening. Trusting. I did not know how long this night would last. But I was no longer waiting for it to end. I was learning how to belong to it. Because this too, this dark, this silence, this tender not knowing, was part of the beloved's path. And I was beginning to walk it with open hands. The days that followed became a gentle repetition of silence, solitude, and a growing stillness that clung to my chest like a second skin. Each morning, I would wake before the sun, not because of discipline, but because something within me stirred with the unseen. It wasn't ambition or routine. It was a longing, quiet and wordless, as though the soul itself had become a flute aching for breath to pass through it. I no longer reached for my pen or parchment upon waking. I no longer prepared discourses or arranged verses. Instead, I simply sat, my knees drawn close, my hands empty, watching the slow breath of the horizon. There is something sacred about the hour before dawn. The world still sleeps, but not entirely. The earth breathes differently, more slowly, more deeply. Even the birds, before their song, seem to whisper secrets in the hush. It was in that sacred breath of time that I began to feel a strange companionship, though no one sat beside me. Not Shams. Not any student or friend. Not even the imagined presence of the divine as I had once known him, robed in form, face, or word. No, this presence was more like an essence, something vast and invisible that seeped into the bones, like warmth rising through cold stone. The darkness no longer frightened me. It became a teacher, a companion, an echo of the silence within me. But more than that, it became a mirror. When I gazed into it, I saw myself not as I had been taught to see, a man of titles, knowledge, and speech, but as something simpler, a breath wrapped in skin, a flicker of awareness, a particle of the infinite trembling inside the temporary. It was not a lowering of the self, as some would call it, but a return. I had peeled back the outer layers and reached the seed. And what I found within that seed was patience. Not the passive patience of someone resigned to delay. No, it was a fierce patience. A burning kind. The patience of seeds buried in winter earth, trusting the sun though they feel no warmth. The patience of the moon, waning in darkness with the knowledge that it will shine full again. The patience of the ocean waiting for the storm to pass, knowing the tide must return. It was the patience of love itself, waiting for the beloved to awaken, not with urgency, but with devotion. That was the patience now anchoring me. There were moments I faltered. There were days when the loneliness was not peaceful but sharp. I would stare at the space where Shams used to sit, and my heart would ache so deeply it felt like a wound freshly made. I missed his voice, not because it told me what to do, but because it stripped me of all the things I did not need to be. In his absence, I often wondered if I could still find that clarity on my own. But then I remembered what he had once whispered to me when I asked how to endure the dark night: be patient where you sit in the dark. The dawn is coming, but you must be there when it arrives. Those words became my mantra. Not something I chanted aloud, but something I repeated with my breath. I carried them in my ribcage like a lamp, dim, steady, enough to keep walking. And slowly, something began to shift. Not the world. Not the sky. But me. I began to see the flickers of dawn not outside, but within. A thought would rise from nowhere and touch me like sunlight. A stranger's smile in the street would pierce me with a sudden wave of tenderness. The cry of a baby, the creaking of wood, the scent of freshly baked bread, these ordinary things began to glow with a subtle, wordless radiance. I realized then that the dawn does not come all at once. It arrives in glimpses, like shy footsteps across a sleeping field. It does not explode into being. It stirs slowly, painting the edges of things before touching their centers. And the soul, too, must adjust to the light gradually. If it arrives too fast, we would turn away, afraid of its brilliance. The dark teaches us to recognize the light, not as opposite, but as companion. One prepares the heart for the other. So I did not rush my awakening. I did not chase the light. I let it find me. I let it warm my chest 1 inch at a time. I let it rise in me like the slow unfolding of a flower long hidden under snow. And in doing so, I began to feel reborn, not in the way religion had taught me, but in the way breath renews itself moment by moment. I became new not by changing form, but by learning to see the old with new eyes. Even my sorrow began to feel holy. Even my longing felt like a path. And I came to understand something I had never truly grasped before, that the darkness is not the enemy of the light, but its cradle. That the dawn is not the reward for endurance, but its inevitable companion. That when we sit patiently in the dark, we are not waiting for something to come to us, we are allowing what is already within us to emerge. The soul is not asleep. It is gathering. It is preparing. It is softening so that when the light does come, we can receive it with open hands, not clenched fists. So I kept sitting. I kept breathing. I kept trusting. I stopped asking when the sun would rise. I stopped searching the sky for signs. I turned inward, into the cave of my own being, and I waited, not passively, but faithfully. I let the silence stretch across me like a sky, and I rested beneath it like a field ready for the plow. And though my eyes still saw shadows, my heart began to glow. And that, I knew, was the beginning of dawn. The night deepened and stretched on, unfolding like an endless tapestry woven with threads of shadow and silence. Yet within me, a subtle transformation was stirring, a quiet, almost imperceptible unfolding, like a bud trembling on the cusp of bloom but not yet ready to open. This awakening was not born from thunder or sudden illumination. It was the slow, deliberate breathing of a soul learning to dwell in mystery, learning to hold the unanswerable without despair or haste. It was the fragile courage of patience, made flesh and spirit. In that sacred darkness, the restless mind, the one that had always raced ahead with questions, judgments, and demands, began to soften. Like a great wave retreating from the shore, the urgent compulsion to know and control ebbed away, leaving behind a stillness so profound it was almost painful in its depth. I felt myself surrendering to the silence that enveloped me, like a mother's arms cradling a child in the stillness of sleep. I was no longer fighting, no longer striving to conquer or understand all at once. I was simply being, breathing, waiting, listening. The heaviness that had pressed down on my chest for so long lifted, replaced by a tenderness so delicate it might have been a dream. I became aware of the gentle rhythms that pulse beneath all things, the slow, steady undulations of time and being that no eye can see but every heart can feel. The ebb and flow of breath, the rise and fall of the earth beneath my feet, the distant song of the wind weaving through ancient trees, all these small miracles whispered to me in the dark, teaching me the secret language of patience. This language is not measured by hours or days, but by moments, the patient pause between heartbeats, the soft stillness between waves, the quiet space between one breath and the next. I thought again of the seed buried deep beneath winter's frozen soil. It knows nothing of the cold or the frost or the long nights. It only knows to hold on, to endure the silence, to trust the secret life stirring within. It knows that if it breaks through too soon, it will perish. So it waits. The dark does not frighten it. It embraces it. It leans into it. It becomes the dark itself. And from that darkness, the green shoot will rise, slow and certain as a prayer answered. So too must we become the dark in our times of waiting. Not to surrender to despair, but to embody trust. Not to forget the light, but to carry it quietly beneath our skin, like a sacred ember, until the time is ripe. I sat with that truth folded in my heart like a fragile flower, knowing that the days ahead might still be filled with shadows. But I also knew that the shadows were no longer a place to fear. They were a space to be tended, to be loved, to be transformed. There was a sacredness to this waiting that I had never before perceived. It was not a void or a barren wasteland, but a fullness, a deep reservoir brimming with possibility. The silence itself was holy, for in silence the soul learns to listen, not just to the whisper of the divine, but to the beating of its own heart, to the soft music hidden beneath the noise of the world. I listened deeply, and in that listening, I began to hear a new song, not one of certainty or command, but of invitation. An invitation to trust the process, to honor the darkness, to embrace the patient unfolding of all things in their own time. And as I sat there, I felt a tenderness growing within me, a gentle compassion for the self I had been and the self I was becoming. I realized that in my impatience, in my yearning for quick answers and swift light, I had often been harsh with myself. I had judged my doubts as weakness, my fears as failure. But now, in the stillness, I saw those parts of me as sacred teachers. They were the shadows that shaped the light. The night that made the dawn possible. They were not enemies, but guides along the path of transformation. With this new understanding came a deep peace. Not the peace of avoidance or denial, but the peace of acceptance. The peace that comes when we stop struggling against what is and begin to embrace it fully. The peace that allows us to sit in the dark, knowing that the dawn is already woven into the fabric of the night. This peace settled over me like a gentle rain, soaking into the soil of my soul, softening the hardened places, coaxing life to rise once more. I pressed my hand to my heart, feeling the steady beat beneath my palm. It was a rhythm older than the stars, older than time itself. It was the pulse of life, the song of the beloved, calling me home to myself. And in that moment, I knew with unshakable certainty that no matter how long the night lasted, no matter how deep the darkness, the dawn would come. It always comes, as sure as the tide returns to the shore, as certain as the breath that fills my lungs. So I breathed in deeply, filling my lungs with the cool night air, and I breathed out, releasing every trace of fear and doubt. I was ready. Ready to wait. Ready to trust. ready to become the dark so that I might also become the dawn. And in that readiness, I found a strength I had never known, the strength not to fight the night, but to welcome it, not to resist the silence, but to rest within it, not to flee the shadows, but to walk with them as companions on the path toward light. The days that unfolded after that quiet turning inside me settled into a rhythm unlike any I had known before, one not driven by the urgency of tasks or the clamor of demands, but by the slow, deliberate unfolding of presence itself. Each morning, long before the sun began to paint the sky with its pale colors, I would awaken, not stirred by anxiety or impatience, but by a quiet anticipation that defied description. It was not the anticipation of events or achievements, but the longing simply to be awake, to be aware, to be open and receptive to the subtle miracles woven into the fabric of each breath. This anticipation was like the tender murmur of a hidden spring beneath frozen earth, waiting to bubble forth in its own time. I found myself drawn to the courtyard beneath the vast expanse of the dark sky, my legs folded beneath me in humble repose, my hands resting gently on my knees. The cool morning breeze brushed against my skin with the tenderness of a whispered benediction, carrying the sense of damp earth and the faint sweetness of unseen blossoms. In those still moments, I felt the presence of something vast and ancient, something beyond words or form, yet deeply intimate, seeping into the very core of my being. It was at once a tender embrace and a formidable force, like the hands of a healer or the patient gaze of a lover who waits without demand, without judgment. But within that stillness, doubt sometimes crept in, a quiet, insistent shadow that questioned whether this patient waiting was truly enough. The mind, ever restless, tempted the soul to leap forward, to grasp at the light with frantic hands rather than allow it to arrive in its own perfect time. Yet, whenever the shadows of impatience threatened to overwhelm me, I returned to the sacred mantra that had become the rhythm of my breath and the anchor of my soul: be patient where you sit in the dark. The dawn is coming. These words were no promise to be dissected or a goal to be hurried toward. They were a sacred invitation to trust the unfolding, to surrender to the mystery that enfolds all life, terrifying and beautiful in equal measure. As I pondered the nature of darkness, I began to understand it not as a foe or a prison, but as a vital companion on the journey toward awakening. Darkness, I saw, is the womb from which all light is born. It is the fertile soil in which seeds lie buried, the deep night that offers rest to the weary earth. Without darkness, the dawn could never shine. To sit patiently in the dark, therefore, is to honor the sacred process of transformation. It is to recognize that before any new life can emerge, there must be a time of quiet, of invisibility, of preparation. This realization sparked a profound transformation within me. I began to perceive my own struggles and sorrows not as curses or failures, but as sacred threads woven into the tapestry of my becoming. Each moment of pain, each night of loneliness, each breath held in uncertainty became a precious part of the whole. No longer did I seek to escape or deny these shadows, I embraced them with compassion and gratitude. In doing so, I found that the darkness itself was suffused with light, a light subtle, steady, and unwavering. One evening, as the sun slipped beneath the horizon and the sky deepened into hues of indigo and violet, I felt a stirring in my chest, a warmth spreading slowly like the first gentle rays of dawn touching the earth. It was not a sudden revelation, but a quiet awakening, a soft unfolding of something that had been waiting patiently all along. I realized then that the dawn does not arrive with fanfare or spectacle. It comes gently, like a lover's whisper, a secret shared between souls. It is present even in the deepest night, waiting for us to open our hearts and receive it. With this newfound understanding, I moved through my days with a new grace. I attended to my duties and interactions not as obligations but as expressions of love and presence. I listened more deeply to those around me, seeing beyond their words to the light and shadow that danced within their eyes. Joy came to me in simple moments, the smile of a child, the scent of fresh bread, the warmth of sunlight on my skin. These small sparks of light became anchors, reminders that the dawn is always near, even when hidden. Yet, I knew that the true dawn is not merely a moment in time but a state of being, a realization that unfolds within the heart when patience and faith meet. It is the gentle acceptance of life as it is, without resistance or haste. It is the willingness to sit in the dark, to hold the silence, to wait with open hands and a tender heart. This, I understood, is the essence of love, the love that does not cling or demand but trusts and allows. As I sat beneath the stars each night, I felt my soul expand, embracing the vastness of the cosmos and the intimacy of my own being. No longer was I a prisoner of fear or doubt, but a traveler on the path of becoming, guided by the quiet light within. And in that light, I found a peace that surpassed all understanding, a peace born not of certainty but of trust. So I continued to wait, to breathe, to be. Knowing that no matter how long the night may last, the dawn is coming. And in that knowing, I found my home, my refuge, my endless beginning. The night that enveloped me that evening was unlike any other I had known. It was not merely darkness, but a profound depth of silence that seemed to press upon every fiber of my being. The world around me had fallen into stillness, the kind that humbles the soul and strips away all pretenses. I sat there, the cool earth beneath me grounding my restless heart, and I surrendered fully to the embrace of that enveloping dark. There was no fight, no resistance. Only the deep, abiding presence of quiet waiting. As I breathed slowly and deeply, I became aware of a small flame flickering within me, so faint, so tender, it could easily have been mistaken for a fleeting thought. But I knew it was something far greater, the pulse of hope, the subtle breath of dawn stirring in the depths of night. It was not a roar or a blaze, but a gentle, steady kindling, an ember held carefully in the palm of patience. This tiny flame, though fragile, held a power that neither time nor darkness could diminish. In that sacred moment, I reflected on the nature of the dawn itself. How often I had imagined it as a sudden burst of light, a glorious unveiling after the agony of night. But now I understood that the dawn is far more subtle and mysterious. It comes not with noise or haste, but as a quiet unfolding, like the slow parting of a curtain, revealing the first delicate hues of morning. The dawn is a lover's whisper in the silence, a secret shared between the soul and the cosmos. It is present always, even in the deepest darkness, waiting patiently for the heart to open and receive it. I thought of the ancient trees that towered around me, their roots delving deep into the hidden earth. They do not demand the sun's warmth or rush their growth. Instead, they endure harsh winters, storms, and drought with a steadfast patience. Beneath the surface, life pulses slowly, gathering strength in secret until the moment arrives to stretch toward the light. These trees teach us a sacred lesson, that strength is born not in haste but in endurance, not in grasping but in trusting the timing of life. This awareness transformed how I viewed my own suffering and waiting. I no longer saw the shadows within me as burdens or failures but as necessary companions on the journey. Each moment of pain, each tear shed in silence, each breath held in uncertainty was a thread woven into the tapestry of my becoming. I began to embrace my darkness not as an enemy but as a sacred teacher, revealing the contours of my soul that could only be shaped in shadow. As I sat beneath the vast expanse of stars, the sky itself seemed to echo this lesson. The constellations, ancient and unchanging, shone quietly through the veil of night, their light softened by distance and time. They reminded me that even the brightest lights begin their journey in the darkness, that stars themselves are born from the collapse of shadowed clouds. The night sky became a mirror of my own inner world, a place where light and dark coexist, dance, and create together. In the depths of that night, I also became aware of the sacred rhythm of waiting. Waiting is not mere passivity or resignation but an active, loving presence. It is a willingness to be fully here, fully awake, fully alive in the midst of not knowing. It is to hold the tension between yearning and acceptance, to trust the invisible currents that carry the soul forward even when the path is hidden. This waiting is itself a prayer, a meditation on faith and hope woven through time. Sometimes, as I closed my eyes and breathed into the silence, I heard faint whispers, soft murmurings like the rustle of leaves or the fluttering of wings. These subtle voices seemed to come from beyond the veil, messages from the unseen realm offering encouragement and solace. They spoke of love that never abandons, of grace that never fails, of presence that never forsakes. In those whispers, I felt the hand of the beloved resting gently upon my heart, reminding me that I am never truly alone, even in the loneliest hours. I also learned to distinguish between different kinds of darkness. There is a darkness that suffocates, that drains the spirit and closes the heart. But there is also a sacred darkness, a sheltering womb where the soul can rest, heal, and prepare to be born anew. To sit patiently in this sacred darkness is to enter a holy sanctuary where transformation is possible. It is a space of deep listening and tender becoming. One particular night, as I breathed slowly and steadily, I felt the first stirrings of dawn rise not in the sky but within my own being. It was a warmth spreading gently through my chest, a soft light unfolding in the quiet chambers of my heart. This inner dawn did not banish the darkness but embraced it, weaving shadow and light into a seamless tapestry of grace and beauty. It was the blossoming of hope, the awakening of faith, the gentle unfurling of love that had been quietly growing beneath the surface. I understood then that patience is more than waiting. It is an art, a sacred dance of surrender and strength, acceptance and yearning. It is the courage to remain fully present in the mystery, to trust that the night itself holds wisdom beyond our understanding, and to believe with all our hearts that the dawn will come when it is ready. Patience asks us to sit with open hands and open hearts, ready to receive whatever gift the moment brings, whether it be light or shadow, joy or sorrow. In that deep stillness, beneath the silent heavens, I felt a gratitude so vast it overflowed from my soul, a gratitude for the darkness that had taught me to wait, for the silence that had taught me to listen, and for the dawn that was surely coming. This gratitude filled me with a peace that transcended circumstance, a peace that flowed from a wellspring within me eternal and unshakable. So I remained there, in the waiting, in the stillness, embraced by the tender arms of the night. Not because I was helpless or defeated, but because I had learned that this is where true transformation lives, in the sacred patience of the soul. The dawn was coming, and I would greet it not with desperation or clinging, but with quiet joy and open arms, ready to walk forward into the light that had been growing all along inside me. There came a profound moment along this winding journey, a moment when the lessons I had gathered from the darkness and from waiting did not simply remain as abstract thoughts or gentle whispers in my heart, but crystallized into a living truth that reshaped the very way I moved through the world. For so long, I had wrestled with a relentless urge to control, to grasp certainty as though it were a tangible possession, something I could clutch tightly and never lose. Yet the darkness, patient and profound, gently taught me a different way. It showed me that true strength is born not from force or grasping, but from surrender. True strength is the willingness to release the illusions of control, to dissolve the rigid grip on outcomes, and to open oneself fully to the flow of life as it reveals itself, slowly, mysteriously, moment by moment. This shift was not sudden. It was the gradual softening of my soul's armor, the quiet tempering of a restless spirit. I began to notice how often I had mistaken impatience for urgency and anxiety for action. How often I had mistaken the restless fire burning inside me as a call to immediate movement, when really it was a signal to stillness and reflection. The fire that once blazed with frantic intensity now softened into a steady flame, calm and unwavering, enough to illuminate the path without scorching the delicate hope nestled within my heart. The night had shown me that waiting is no punishment but a sacred preparation, a crucible in which resilience and grace are forged. The silence, the emptiness, the seeming stillness, they were not voids but spaces ripe with possibility, spaces where transformation was quietly taking shape. In the stillness of my solitude, my thoughts turned to the nature of time itself. Time, I realized, is not a linear path to be hurried along, but a vast, flowing river with hidden depths and unseen currents. It neither rushes nor lingers, it moves at its own sacred pace, indifferent to the impatience and fears of the mind. To struggle against this pace is to invite suffering, but to flow with it is to find peace. This realization wrapped itself around me like a balm, soothing the agitation that once threatened to consume me. It was an invitation to step out of the frantic race and into a more gentle dance with existence. I found my gaze turning to those who had traveled before me, the saints, the poets, the mystics who had sat patiently in their own nights of waiting and silence. They did not break free from their darkness by force or will. Instead, they surrendered into it, embracing the unknown with devotion and faith. Their patience was not a passive resignation but a vibrant, living presence, a courageous willingness to be fully present with whatever arose, without turning away or closing their hearts. In their example, I glimpsed the very essence of spiritual awakening, the alchemy of presence and trust. This truth awakened within me a deep compassion, not only for myself but for all who wander through their own shadows. I saw how easily we condemn ourselves and others for not moving quickly enough, for not fixing what feels broken or incomplete. Yet the soul's journey cannot be rushed or coerced. It unfolds according to a wisdom that far exceeds human understanding. To honor this unfolding is to honor the sacredness of life itself. One evening, as twilight deepened into night, I sat beneath the ancient canopy of trees, allowing myself to be fully present to the moment. The cool breeze stirred softly through the leaves, carrying with it the delicate scent of jasmine and earth. Above me, the stars twinkled, eternal and unwavering amidst the ever-shifting darkness. The sky became a mirror reflecting my own inner landscape, a place where light and shadow coexist, dance, and create the tapestry of life. In this sacred space, I understood that patience is not simply waiting for the dawn's arrival, but the art of cultivating presence within the dark. To be patient where you sit in the dark is to become a vessel of light even before the dawn breaks. It is the practice of holding space for the unknown, the unseen, and the unformed. It is an act of love, a love that embraces uncertainty with courage and grace. I also realize that the dawn is not a singular event but a gradual illumination, a gentle process that begins within and extends outward. The light first softens the edges of shadow, inviting darkness and light to dance together in a harmony that is both beautiful and profound. This interplay mirrors the soul's journey, marked by moments of clarity and confusion, joy and sorrow, hope and despair. As the night deepened, a warmth spread through my chest, a radiance born of acceptance and faith. It was the light of patience made visible, a quiet glow impervious to the darkest nights. Breathing deeply, I allowed this light to fill every corner of my being, dissolving fear, doubt, and restlessness. Within this light, I found sanctuary, a sacred refuge that no external storm could shake. And so I remained, still, silent, tender, in the embrace of night's mystery. Not as one defeated or resigned, but as one awakened and alive, rooted deeply in the unwavering trust that the dawn is coming. Always coming. When it arrives, I will meet it not with desperation or clinging, but with open hands and a heart wide enough to hold both shadow and light, ready to walk forward into the luminous unfolding that has been quietly growing inside me all along. The moment arrived not with fanfare or the crashing of cymbals, but with the soft, deliberate unfolding of a single breath, a whisper that stirred deep within the core of my being. I was seated beneath the vast cathedral of night, the sky above still scattered with distant stars, each one a silent witness to the passage of time and the unfolding of countless souls' journeys. It was there, in that profound stillness, that I felt the first gentle tremor of dawn rise within me, not the dawn of the world beyond, but the dawn of a light born from patient waiting, silent surrender, and unwavering trust that had cradled me through the long, solitary nights. This dawn was unlike any I had imagined in the days when impatience stirred my heart. It was not a sudden blaze that seared away the darkness, but a subtle, gradual illumination, like the tender unfurling of a flower petal touched by the earliest rays of the sun, or the quiet glow of embers deep beneath ashes, softly kindling into warmth. It began as a faint warmth radiating from the depths of my soul, spreading slowly outward until it touched every corner of my heart, every shadowed place where fear and doubt had lingered. It was the birth of a light that came from within, a light that carried with it the weight and wisdom of all the nights I had waited patiently, the breaths I had held in trust, the silent prayers I had whispered when hope seemed faint. In that sacred moment, all the lessons of darkness, patience, and waiting converged into a clarity so profound it transcended thought. I saw clearly that darkness was never a place to fear or flee from, but a holy sanctuary where the soul is tempered, forged like steel in the quiet heat of a secret flame. The silence, the stillness, the seeming emptiness, they were not voids but the very essence of presence itself, a deep communion with the eternal rhythm that pulses through all creation. I realized that the dawn is not simply the breaking of light across the sky, but the breaking open of the heart to the fullness of existence, the tender blossoming of awareness that reveals both shadow and light as sacred parts of the whole. As the inner dawn grew stronger, I became acutely aware of a profound transformation, not only within myself but in my relationship with the world around me. The familiar landscape of life, with its complexities and contradictions, appeared anew, bathed in a light that revealed hidden depths, infinite textures, and a sacred harmony woven through apparent chaos. I perceived that even the shadows played an essential role in the cosmic dance, that nothing was wasted or lost but rather integrated into the grand tapestry of being. The broken, the painful, the uncertain, they were threads of gold, illuminating the richness of the pattern. Within this radiant light, a deep well of forgiveness blossomed in my heart, for myself, for those I had judged harshly, and for all who struggle beneath the weight of their own shadows. I saw clearly that every stumble, every moment of despair or confusion, was a necessary step on the path to awakening. The wounds I carried were no longer marks of shame or failure but sacred gateways through which the light had entered, making me more compassionate, more humble, more fully alive. I felt gratitude for the pain that had shaped me, for the night that had kept me, for the waiting that had taught me the art of faith. The dawn brought with it a renewed sense of purpose, not a hurried rush toward distant goals or hollow achievements, but a gentle, steady movement grounded in love and presence. I felt called to walk softly upon the earth, to listen deeply to the stories whispered in the eyes of those I met, and to offer kindness freely, without expectation or demand. The light within me became a beacon, not one of pride or superiority, but a humble guide for myself and for others as we navigate the twilight hours of our own journeys. It was a light born of patience, perseverance, and grace. I came to understand that patience is far more than a virtue to be summoned in moments of waiting. It is a way of being, a luminous thread woven into the fabric of every moment. It is the quiet strength that steadies us through life's storms, the gentle hand that calms us when the path seems uncertain. It is the still voice within that whispers, "Wait a little longer. Trust a little deeper. The dawn is coming." This patience is not passive, it is alive, vibrant, and deeply rooted in hope. Even as the morning sun began to spill its golden light across the horizon, bathing the world in warmth and color, I knew that the true dawn I had awaited was not a fleeting event but an ever-unfolding presence within my soul. It would rise and fall with each breath, with every moment of surrender and faith, a living flame to carry me through all seasons of light and shadow, a steady companion on the winding road of life. And so, I continue to sit where the darkness once held me, now transformed by the gentle touch of dawn's light. I am no longer afraid of the night, for I carry within me its sacred lessons like a cherished song, a song of patience, trust, and unwavering hope. I remain patient still, but now with a patience that is alive and vibrant, a patience filled with the quiet joy of knowing. For I hold in my heart a certainty that transcends all doubt: the dawn is always coming. It is the promise written in the stars above, the breath of the eternal flowing through all things, the heartbeat of the beloved calling me home, always calling, always waiting, always guiding me forward into the light.